All right, everybody, we are live with the Combatcast. It's the man they call Dave. It's Cheveruni. We got a special guest here this week, Mr. Dan Bakley from Cage My IQ. But before we do anything, let's hit us with that intro video. Are you a fan of pro wrestling, comedy, and combat sports? Then we have the podcast for you because we cover that and much, much more.
Do you like to debate with your friends? Do we have the perfect segment for you? It's the 531, where we take any given subject, break it down to a top 5. From there, we debate it down to 3, and then into that number 1 spot.
If you want to get a hold of us, find us on our social medias. Search Working Fans Podcast on any major social media platform. And if you want to find the podcast, search for us on any major podcast platform, as well as YouTube.
Working Fans Podcast. We put in the work so you don't have to.
All right, everybody, welcome back. And as I said in the beginning, we got Dan Bakley here. And before we get started with that, too, Chevy's going to tell us what we got coming up.
All right, so tomorrow we have a special podcast, October 5th. If you're watching live with us, we're going to have LFA fighter Mateo Gonzalez. That'll be our first fighter interview. We're looking forward to that. And October 15th, UFC Fight Night, Grasso versus Arroyo. Then October 22nd, big UFC 280 card. That's Oliveira versus Makhachev. That's going to be a huge card. We're looking forward to that one. And then the end of the month, October 29th, UFC Fight Night Cater versus Allen.
And since we have Dan on the show and we're going to be doing a little collaboration, we will be airing some of Dan Bakley's Cage My IQ's interviews coming up starting next Tuesday, I believe, or actually after this one. Tonight.
Yeah, 7 p.m. Yeah, we're going to be airing Miranda's interview with UFC flyweight Miranda Maverick.
Nice.
Yes. Dan, how was that interview?
It was great. It was nice talking to her. She's very nice, very insightful. It kind of started like a Instagram beef right after she got off of, with her and Blanchfield, but yeah.
Wow. Interesting timing, huh? Yeah. Dan, before we review this past weekend's UFC cards and talk about some news, a little background about you. What got you into MMA?
I've always liked MMA. Like one of the fights that really got me into it was the 2-fight matchup between Shogun and, of course, with him and Machida. Like I started watching around that time. Of course, you know, the Iceman and Ortiz. Like I watched those, but I didn't really start watching it until Dana White took over and made it more polished. And then I watched their second fight between Machida and Shogun, and I was like, "Geez, this is really nice." You know, from there on, I started watching it every week. I've always been a wrestling fan, and to me, like MMA is kind of like a different version of it. You got guys going back and forth. So I was like, let me watch this now, and then I just fell in love with it. I came with the podcast around the time of the pandemic. A lot of people were already doing wrestling ones. So I was like, let me be different. Let me do an MMA one, and then of course now I'm doing both. I'm covering more MMA, but I'm starting to do a little bit more wrestling. But like, I really like the interview aspect of things, getting to interview the fighters, getting to know them a little bit more, a little bit of their tendencies, what they like to do. You know, it's a nice thing to do on the side.
Is there an interview you were particularly nervous for more than anyone?
It definitely had to be John Anik, man. It had to be that one. I got lucky enough, my buddy, he was a big fan of him too. He wrote him this big, long letter, email, and wanted to interview him. John Anik answered. And I was actually kind of helping him out get started with like podcast. And he was like, yeah, let's do it with yours. And I was like, hey, I'd be honored to help you out with John Anik. So we had him on. Great guy, very knowledgeable. I kind of picked up a lot of things from that interview with like just prepping for like prediction videos, going to learn fighters, and then just little things with interviewing.
All right. Now, Chevy, before we, do you have any questions you want to add to this, or do you want to get right to the news?
Let's get right into the news.
All right.
All right. So, came out earlier this week. Aspen Ladd signed with PFL for the 2023 featherweight season. How do you think she's going to do over there, Dan?
Well, that didn't take long because what did it take? Like 2 days, and then boom.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I'm just picturing her against Harrison. And I was like, I could see her making the playoffs, but as soon as she faces somebody like Harrison or Pachenko, I think she'll kind of fall flat. I feel like right before that injury she had a couple years ago, she was doing really good volume-wise and being aggressive. She came back and she seemed kind of tentative. And of course, we know she missed weight 2 out of the 3 of her last bouts. But the only one that she didn't was a catch weight with Norma Dumont the week after missing weight. So it's like now she's going to have to make weight or they won't even let her fight. So it's going to be like I feel like if it was 2 years ago, I'd be more impressed with it. But right now, I think she could do enough to make the playoffs, but then lose whoever she fights first.
Do you think that this is possibly just a way back to the UFC? She's there. She proves she can make the weight, and then she, because she's a relatively young prospect. Yeah. Do you think she ends up back in the UFC?
It depends on how much PFL is paying her.
Yeah, that's a valid point.
Because they've been bringing a lot of people on, and of course, PFL pays almost twice as much more, if not more than that, than UFC. Yeah, they're not going to have the sponsorship like the UFC is, like with like Venom and all that, ESPN. But PFL does have ESPN in the back pocket. The fighters are making a lot more, and all the fights are like a couple of fights apart. So you're kind of guaranteed 3 or 4 fights, 3 fights at least. So it depends on how her experience is with PFL.
Yeah.
Now, I'm kind of curious because you have some knowledge about this. Obviously, if you win the tournament, you can win $1 million. If you win $1 million, you're making more than the UFC. But and I'm sure some fighters are probably brought in at a higher wage. But across the board, are there, like you, like the people that are like preliminary, are they making just as much as the UFC? Is it comparable? Is it a little less, a little more?
I think they're probably making just like similar to what a UFC fighter on the prelims would. I think people on the main stage, like if you look at Kayla Harrison, she's making probably each fight $250,000, and that's just each fight. And then she still has that chance of winning $1 million. So it's like she
100% chance.
Yeah, she can make $1 million just with 4 fights, and then make an extra $1 million because of the brand she built. I know what's his name who just came in there.
Shane Burgos?
Not Shane Burgos.
Marlon Moraes?
No, last year. He came in last year. Of course, his brother's a champ in Bellator. Why am I not?
Yeah. Lima?
Not Lima. His brother is a champ, but then they're doing the Grand Prix right now, but he's not in it because he's hurt. And then
Pettis.
Pettis, yes. Showtime Pettis. I don't know why I forgot. He's making a lot of money. He has a big poor fight rate just because of his namesake. Like a lot of those people coming from there are making more money going to PFL.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but like the normal people that are, like, I would say coming through the Challenger Series, which is like the Dana White Contender Series for PFL that they just started, they're making probably $20,000. They're just making just enough what they would in like a UFC event. But of course, if you get lucky enough to get to the playoffs, that's where the money is. Real money is for them.
Right. So going into this UFC card last weekend, there was all these rumors about why Dana was locking out the media and the fans, and Mackenzie Dern came out in the press conference beforehand and said that she heard that Mark Zuckerberg was renting out the whole arena. And then Dana came out and said that's total bullshit. And then come fight night, the arena looks pretty empty, but you see Mark Zuckerberg and his wife sitting cage side. What do you think about that? What do you think about how Dana handled it? Do you care if Mark Zuckerberg is renting out the entire Apex for himself?
I don't care. I think it's weird. Why would Dana White lie and just say, no, that's false, blah, 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 unless there's a reason behind it. Maybe he didn't want to like put it out there that he kind of got bought into letting him take it and got a lot of money when he's had this whole mess of not paying the fighters, but then he's allowing somebody to pay him out for use of their event that they're about to perform at, where the fighters like to fight in front of the fans. So they like to do it. It kind of is like an energy boost for them at times. And who knows how much Zuckerberg paid out for, but it's like, okay, like he paid him out. Are we going to see this more in the future at the Apex? Or is this just like this weird anomaly because maybe he overpaid to have it for like a random fight night when it was supposed to be a lot better? But of course, we had the main event and the co-main event drop out a month before, and they had to like kind of patch it up.
Right. That's my worry too. Is this going to become a regular thing that the Apex can just be bought out by billionaires? You know, obviously not super fair to regular fans, as that can be an intimate setting to see fights. I know the seats in there are quite expensive as is, but you know, you're getting a special intimate setting. So
yeah.
Dan, Chevy too. I'll hit you guys with this question. We got Randy asking in the comments. 2 questions. One, do you see Kayla Harrison going to UFC or Bellator at some point? And also, what are your thoughts on the Bo Nickel hype?
I could see Kayla going to Bellator. I don't think she'll ever go to UFC. I just don't see it happening. She's making too much money. She has said in the past that it's all about the fighter pay, and I don't think she has that relationship with Dana. I do think that potential matchup with Cyborg is something that she looks into. I know her and Nunez were teammates, and then they kind of ended on kind of like not bad terms, but like indifferent terms. But I don't think that fight is as big as what it used to be since Pena beat Nunez. So I feel like there's a chance that it could be Bellator. But then Scott Coker has said that he's willing to work with other promotions to do interpromotional matchups. So she could do that matchup and not even leave PFL. So,
right, I think that's probably the most likely scenario, because the UFC is not going to do that. They're going to want to sign Kayla, and they don't even have a featherweight division. I'm pretty sure she fights at lightweight. So
yeah.
They're not going to build a whole division around her.
She can move down to featherweight. She did that in Invicta FC, and she was able to use her elbows there because PFL, you're not allowed to use those elbow shots to the face. And she bloodied up the opponent that she had in that main event very bad with those elbows. So she said she doesn't like to cut down the featherweight,
right?
But she's okay to.
Right.
But like, I think the
money's right. Yeah.
The money's right. And there's a lot more fighters at featherweight in Bellator than there is, of course, in UFC. There's only like 5 people in the UFC in featherweight.
Right. They don't even have rankings.
Yeah.
I would imagine it's a situation where you fight your career as a lightweight in PFL, and then you're willing to cut down to featherweight for 2-3 big money fights. And those big money fights on the table really right now are only realistically Cyborg, and I would say Nunez, and there's always a possibility Pena or someone could slip in there. But you're really talking 2-3 times in her career, she would probably want to do that.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to do a catch weight between her and Cyborg to kind of meet in the middle, because I don't think it would ever be for one of the titles, because there's no way she could fight for a PFL one, Cyborg. And then if Kayla went and fought just one fight in Bellator just to fight Cyborg, they wouldn't have her be for the belt. I could see it be like a catch weight in between featherweight and lightweight.
Just a super fight, yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Bo Nickel?
I like him. Like we've seen him 2 fights, basically 1 minute each. He rushes in there. He can grapple with you. He has the power. It's just that I gotta see him against UFC talent. That's my only thing. And just one fight. He's already talking about one to fight Khamzat Chimaev right away. And I'm just like, hold your horses a little bit. I gotta see what you do against somebody, because you're being the regional scene guys and you're being the 2 guys that you fought on the Contender Series, but it's a different step from the Contender Series to these fights. We've seen a lot of guys have great success, but it's like, I got to see what he does with one fight, though. If he does this in like his against Jamie Pickett, because he's already booked against the Nightwolf, if he can do that to him, then I'll be impressed.
Chevy, you had an interesting theory because Nichols fighting on that Darren Till card. That Darren Till's got a fight too, and you were saying if the 2 win, go ahead.
Yeah, they had a bit of a back and forth on Twitter, and obviously, Bo called out Hazmat, and Till and Hazmat are friends, so maybe he fights Till, who is fighting in a couple weeks. Maybe he fights Till whether Till wins or loses, and then he beats, let's say, in his world, he beats Till, and then he calls out Hazmat. I could see that being a path for him if they put him on the fast track. I'm with you, though. I would like to see him against UFC caliber opponent, and hopefully longer than a minute. We haven't really gotten to see his striking. I know in his first fight that was before the Contender Series, he knocked out his opponent in 30 seconds, but I don't know anything about that guy. So I do like, I'm really high on Bo's attitude, his confidence. I love all that. He's great on the mic. I would like to see him become a star. I think that he'd be a great star for the UFC, but let's see where he's at for real.
I want to see him. I'd rather see him not fight Till, but Till's opponent, Duplessis. I'd rather see him fight him, because that'd be a really big brawl with how they both fight, because Driscus likes to stand in there, just trade shots. He doesn't hide his face. He takes a lot of damage, but he just gets in there. Even when he's tired, he still throws at the 100%. Same rate. At the same rate that he does when he's not tired. So it'd be interesting, but he does leave himself open to those guillotines. So I've seen Bo Nickel transition from striking to like grappling so quick. That could be a big thing in a fight like that.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. And I would actually favor Duplessis in that fight over Till. So maybe he calls him out if he gets that win.
Yeah.
And speaking of Chimaev.
So he seems to be, there's conflicting reports currently on whether or not he is stuck in Russia. He went to Russia to visit some family, and Combatcast says that his passport has been held and he's, possibly being recruited for the Russian army against Ukraine. So, his manager says that's not true. What do you think about that?
It's crazy, but I think he's telling the truth. That he's just visiting family. I think with the relationship with the Dana White there, it's going to be easy for him, even if it was true, to get out of it. I think Dana White would be able to somehow get him out of it with how a lot of these countries are like, okay, if you are like a fighter or like a sports athlete, sometimes they have that like loophole where they allow you to go out of it because you're making money and doing something to represent your country. And he represents Russia. He is one of those in-betweeners where he's from there, but he's always been in Sweden, and he likes to represent Sweden too, which doesn't have any bad will from Russia. And that's where he trains. Of course, it's him, Darren Till. Gustafsson was trained there. They're actually bringing in what's his name, Whitaker, in to work with him. for a little while, but it's like I don't see any situation where he gets stuck there and then they won't let him out.
Right, I'm with you. If anyone loves fighters, it's Putin for sure. So, I agree with you. I think he could get out of it if that was the case. I also don't believe that is true. He probably is free to come and go as he pleases.
Just look at a guy like Habib. How many times does he go back? Because that's part of Russia there, where he's from. And how many times does he go back and forth? Because that's one of his main training gyms up there. And then he has people go there and work with them. And all those fighters that come out of there, you don't see any issues of that happening.
Right. Well, let's talk about a new segment that you brought up right before we went on. So Elov is out of his fight against Thug Nasty due to a injury in training, and you think Topuria is going to be stepping in?
Yeah, they announced. Well, it was kind of funny. They announced this morning that Topuria was going to be the backup for the Elov Mitchell fight, and then the other fight that they have planned. I'm trying to think of the other top fight that they have in the division. There's another fight that was just booked, and he was going to be the fill-in for both of those.
Is that the Cater and Arnold Allen fight? Yeah.
Yes, Cater, Allen, and then Evlov and Mitchell. And of course, apparently training today, Evlov got injured. We don't know the severity of it. There's a chance that he could have to pull out of the fight, and if so, they're just going to slot Topuria right in there against Bryce Mitchell. Would be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, both. I'm into both of those matchups, really. So either way, I'm into that fight.
Yeah.
What do you favor? I like Mitchell in a lot of those fights. I think they're all great, but I feel like Mitchell is just very close to that cusp of being, in that title picture there.
He's good with the grappling.
Yeah.
I could see better with Mitchell with the striking, and he showed some good things in the Edson Barbosa fight. But to me, there's like a difference between fighting Barbosa, who's more about the leg kicks, than a guy like Topuria, who will stand up, grapple with you a little bit, but like he hits hard with his hands. Like you saw that matchup that he had in England where he was getting beat. He was getting beat, but then he came out there, hit the combination, and just got the knockout there. And he has good takedown defense. So if Mitchell doesn't take him down, it'll be interesting to see how he can bear having to trade shots with Topuria.
That was the weekend he got into it with Patty too.
Yeah.
I
think also if Topuria was to get taken down, he could probably get up too. If Bryce doesn't snatch onto his neck or an arm or something quickly, Topuria would be able to get up. So Bryce would have to keep taking him down. That would drain him for sure.
Yeah. I still favor Mitchell by a little bit, but with how some people are saying, Mitchell was a big time favorite, I think it's like I would give Mitchell like a minus 180 or something like that. Something where close to where he's still favored, but it's close enough to where it could almost be like 60-40.
Mm-hmm. All right, well let's get into the UFC card. The Mark Zuckerberg bought out. So
as Miss Cheveruni here posted earlier. Shout out to
Facebook Fight Night.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we won't go over everything. I'm just gonna highlight a few things. So I'm a big Brendan Allen fan, and he got a first round rear naked choke over Jotko. Did you get to see that fight?
Yeah, I was favoring Jotko going into it because he's really good at keeping the space, going in and out, and then just doing enough to hit his opponent. But Brendan Allen has that lengthy body, and he was just able to just get to him. And I was kind of shocked at that. I was shocked that Jotko allowed that to happen because he's been so good at just defending it. And it was good for Allen because he needed something like that, like a win like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jotko, I think I agree with you. He's very good at distance management, and he's a very intelligent fighter. He stays safe, and he'll keep himself, out of danger while just doing enough damage to survive, and win. So I was happy with Brendan Allen's win. Maybe Brendan Allen is possibly a Bo Nickel opponent in the future. He's outside the top 15. What do you think about that matchup?
I could see it happening because it's right around, like, if Bo Nickel could come in and beat Pickett, it'll be right around that range. So you could easily book him against Brendan Allen along that. I would actually favor Bo Nickel in that one if he could get by Pickett, just because I've seen Allen get kind of ragdolled and taken down a lot of times, and Brendan Allen is good at the submission defense where he can be on his back but then submit somebody. But then Bo Nickel's he's just so good with pressure and moving forward and then just outpowering you that I would still have to favor him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think matchup wise, Allen would have to lean on his striking, which isn't his strongest suit. You know, he can strike, but he would probably get taken down at will, I think, in that fight. And then another prelim fight I was looking forward to. Ilir Latifi got a decision win over Oleinik, 45-year-old Oleinik. Did you get to watch this one?
Talk about backwards. I thought that Latifi would be the better striker, and then Oleinik would be the better grappler, but it wound up being reverse. Oleinik had a lot of success early with those overhand and hammer shots that he likes to throw, connected a lot with that. But Ilir Latifi came in with a perfect game plan. He was just gonna grapple up with them, pushing up against the cage, just wear on him, wear his gas tank out, and just avoid those big submission entries that he could get caught into. He didn't allow him to do that. Whenever it would come close, he kind of just pushed back and then go back into grappling with them. And he just basically rode out a pretty easy victory there. I believe it was 29-28 just because of the early striking of Oleinik. But Oleinik just couldn't get anything going with trying to take him down or get one of those submissions on him. He had to resort to, like I said, those overhand shots.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Ilir was very dominant with his grappling. I knew that, he could take Alexei down, but I was impressed with his ability to just stay safe. He stayed tight right in his chest. He has no neck to choke, so that was hard.
Yeah. I have to give it up to him, both of those, because these are two guys over the age of 40
right
that were fighting, because Latifi's 42, and then it was the last fight of his deal. So we don't know if he's going to come back or not. I would think he would, because I think he's riding a win streak now. I believe 2 or 3 fight win streak after that win.
But he's a guy like, just we were talking about earlier. He's a guy that probably benefits from companies like Bellator and PFL being so strong. So we'll see him in the pro, and he's a guy I'd like to see maybe in another promotion. Because how far is he going to go in the UFC?
And he can fight 3 different divisions, because he's fought middleweight, he's fought light heavyweight, he's fought heavyweight. He can go up and down, and he's pretty good at weight management within him because of the style fighting that he does. So I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to cash out on a late big fight contract with like a Bellator, or maybe do like a 1 year of PFL where they give him like $100,000 a fight, which I could see PFL doing, and then see if he can make a run at that $1 million. And if not, at least he's going to make $300,000 in a year.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think that might be the best way for him, because he's not going to be, a Francis or a Curtis Blades or anything like that. He's not going to be champ in the UFC. So, especially at his age. So definitely go for the money fights, That was all I was super hyped for on the prelims. You got anything else you wanted to talk about on the prelims?
I was impressed with the Chelsea Chandler against Julia Stoyanko. I picked Stoyanko just because she's had that really great luck with the arm bar the past couple of fights where she was able to lock it in and get the victory. She tried to, but I felt like she was a little lazy with some of her takedown attempts. It allowed Chelsea to just get on top of her. I didn't realize how much of power that Chelsea had until she was hitting her. And you could see, like, every time she hit Storyanko, just like they said in commentary, it was like a deer in the headlight. She just didn't know what to do defending that power, and she just took a lot of shots. And I think once she did the arm bar and she didn't get it in and it got reversed, I felt like she lost like a quarter of her gas tank trying to do that.
Yep.
Chelsea just was managing her punches, throwing at her. She stuffed 2 takedowns and got on top of her. And then finally Carter with the one shot that kind of like put her down.
Mm-hmm.
And then she just finished her with the ground pound. She was done before she even got hit, but she had to finish her on the mat with the ground and pound. And then it was just, I'm intrigued to see what she can do moving forward, because we've seen some decent fighters lose to Storyanko, and then she kind of handily beat her. So,
yeah, Chandler looked super dangerous. I think this was at a catchweight, right? So
she took the fight on 10 days notice.
Yeah, she is a big girl. Stolianko, like you said, it looked like that power really zapped her gas tank for sure. And also her will, I believe. She went for that armbar, like you said, and once she didn't get it, I think she gave up a little bit, or it sucked a little bit of that energy out of her, and she was in trouble. But yeah, Chandler looks super dangerous. I'm excited to watch her fight again. I didn't know about her before this fight card, so definitely
I knew she's from Stockton. She trains with the Gracies. I think she works with the Diaz brothers from time to time. Not that much, just here and there. That's all I knew about her.
Yeah, she's got that mean mug like a Diaz, like a Stockton person. Yeah. Let's move on to the main card. So, Mike Davis had a decision win over Borshev. What'd you think about that one?
It was good. He's a guy that I actually got to talk to a couple years ago. Literally right before he went on the hiatus, I had him on and talked to him. And this is a guy that always stays in shape. I know he rides the bike like 10 miles a day or a couple of times a week. He tries to stay in shape. I knew he was going to be a little bit rusty with the gas tank being out for almost 20 months. That's a long time. Mm-hmm. Even if you train, there's a difference between training and then fighting right after being off that long. But
right, ring rust, yep.
But he knew what to do. Like we've seen Borshev, his weakness, even with being with Team Alpha Male, is the takedown defense. He doesn't have the technical ability to use the tools to kind of defend a takedown or get back up. Like you see, you're supposed to keep your hands inside, and then half the time he's like flaring his hands around, hitting him. And it's like if he gets his hands inside, it allows him to kind of break up a little bit. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't doing it. He got taken down 9 times, which is a lot. I don't expect Mike Davis. I expect Mike Davis to get maybe 1 or 2 takedowns in a fight, but not 9 times. He just kept going back to the well. And anytime they were up, I did like the fact that Borshev had success in round 2 when Mike Davis was taking a breather a little bit from all that round 1, like takedowns and grappling. He had success with the jab and the overhand and a couple of the combinations. It's just that he kept on getting bit by the transitions from head to stomach, and then you just get taken down easily. It was just between 2 fights and you're taken down 16, 17 times. It was kind of like Kevin Holland-esque with how he gets taken down and easily. But at least we've seen Kevin Holland defend it a little bit better or get better. Borshev hasn't. Like when Borshev stands and he doesn't have to deal with that, he's great because he's already good at the striking. But I feel like he needs to move to a different camp because he's there. And he needs somebody who is more stern and more on top of him. Uriah Faber's a great coach, but he's more kind of lenient and
the Cali
he's not
kid,
on top
yeah.
of you. He's just do your thing, yada, yada, yada. But you got to do this, you got to do that. I feel like he needs to go to a Gracie to like harness his takedown defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. His not only his takedown defense, but his grappling defense when he's on the ground. His inability to really do anything. He looked like he was struggling a lot on the ground. There's definitely a blueprint out on how to beat him. I know he's a great kickboxer, but he's going to get taken down at will. Like you said, something like 16 times in 2 fights as not good enough for the UFC. So I think that was his 3rd loss in a row. I would imagine, he's on the chopping block this week.
2nd loss in a row.
2nd loss in a row?
Yeah.
So
he had the knockout, and then he lost to him and I think Dawadu, yeah.
So, I don't know if we're going to see him too much longer in the UFC. Maybe he gets one more shot. He's got a lot to improve on it, but he knows what he needs to work on. So we'll see. Let's move on to the Sadiq Youssef, the quick guillotine over New Haven-born Don Shainis.
Talk about quick. It comes in there. Like the first thing I think of with Sadiq is his boxing. He's very good with his hands. He's very quick. He's had some really good fights. He won the last one. I felt like he beat Arnold Allen. I felt like he had him 2-1 by a slim margin, just because I felt like the volume outdid the grappling that Allen did. He actually stuffed him a lot. I felt like he won that. And then, of course, he came back, beat Alex Caceres. So I like that stylistic matchup, coming back from a loss and facing a guy who can do a little bit of everything. So he comes in here. Of course, we know he was supposed to fight Giga Chikatsuke, and Giga got hurt. Don Shainis comes in here. A lot of people were saying they wouldn't have been surprised if Don was going to win because of his kickboxing style. I just felt like the striking was going to be too much. And he didn't really have to do that much striking. All he did was he ran in, did a couple knees to Don because Don clinched up, got him with the one, and kind of got him stumbling, and then he just jumped on top of it with the guillotine.
Yeah, he pulled that guard.
It was just like boom. Like he knew, like it was like he was planning ahead to do the knee and then the transition to the guillotine. It was just so fluid. He had it cranked. They were even like, oh, he doesn't have it in all the way, and then tap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that much from Don. He's a local for us, other side of the state for us, born from New Haven, Connecticut. So we're also, Dave and I are both big fans of Glory MMA because we are both big fans of James Krause. So I was pulling for him, even though I'm a Youssef fan. His striking didn't look that great to me from what I saw. Once he got clinched in, he threw super wide hooks to the body. But you might be able to chalk that up to UFC jitters. Super early. He just got caught with a good shot. Yeah,
that's why I put it that way. No matter what you do, if the guy gets the perfect shot at the perfect time, there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm with you about Glory. I'm a big James Krause guy. I've interviewed 3 of his fighters already. They all preach the same thing with him. I applaud him for retiring early and then to transition to being a head coach. Mm-hmm. And it seems like it doesn't seem like he's like one of the guys where it's like, okay, all of his guys are just win, but he has so many fighters. It feels like they come to him for a reason because he's so good at just coaching. I think he has over 15 fighters under him.
Right. And I feel like if you listen to him in between rounds, he has a very personal connection with each fighter too. Yeah. So I think that might be part of it as well. He's able to connect with these fighters, especially because he was in the UFC. And he has a great understanding of the game. So we're huge fans of James Krause.
Yeah. That's something Mike Tyson talked about too, like being a coach. While he's like, someone was talking about his knowledge, and he said, I could never be that. He says, because to be a great coach too, you have to be able to motivate other people, and that's, we've seen it where different coaching, sometimes people will give, they'll start yelling at their fighters, right? And, like they'll get back in there. And that works for some people. Some people, that doesn't work with. You got to break it down technically, or, they just give them honestly, like, okay, we're back against the wall. Or sometimes you've seen coaches try to lie a little bit. Oh, you're doing great, because they need to hear that,
And then there's just fighters that will respond better to somebody that knows that their coach did it and he went through the fire just like they did. So it's like, oh, he's telling me to get into guard, to do this, and he's done this in the past. I'm definitely going to listen to him because he knows what he's talking about. He was here a couple of years ago compared to maybe a guy that's just picking it up because maybe he trained it but he didn't fight it. You're going to be more inclined to listen to the guy that has the experience, who's fought for the company already and can really tell you the ins and outs of really sticky situations. And I think that's why he gets in there, and that's why a lot of the fighters actually go with the game plan of he actually is a little different than some. He's the one that watches the fights and does all the notes and then tells them what to do, where some the coaches have their fighter watch it with them and take the notes, but the fighters have so much trust in him that they allow him to do everything for them.
Right. That says a lot about a chemistry that you have with a head coach for sure. All right, let's move on. Barcelo's decision win over Trevin Jones, bantamweight matchup. What about that one?
Trevin Jones just seems so gun shy. Like they mentioned many times, he's a counter fighter, but like early on, like he did pretty good, pushing forward. He just wasn't throwing enough. He just wasn't throwing at all. And then when he threw, he would miss. And he kind of allowed Barcelos to land those combinations here and there. He was landing those leg kicks to the body. He would take chances throwing leg kicks to the head because he knew that Trevin Jones wasn't throwing, being aggressive with the counterattack. So he was taking more shots here and there. And that's basically how it worked for all 3 rounds. And then he had big success grappling up and pushing up against the cage. And one of the things I liked was the fact that he did that. And then he got the leg trip. I think it was round 2. He got the leg trip. And then he just he tried to finish him off, but he wasn't being crazy about it. It was just, okay, I'm going to do it. Throw here, throw there, not trying to kill my energy. And I think Jones just landed maybe a total of 15 to 18 strikes. It was just, it wasn't enough to do anything in the fight. It just wasn't there. I don't know if it was the fact that Barcelos just was able to get him every time before he could get anything started, or he just didn't like the matchup. But Barcelos had his number the whole fight.
Yeah. So what I put in my notes was urgency. That's what he needs, and he talked about how the judges don't know how to score a fight if there's counter striking. Well, if you're going to be a counter striker, you need your opponent to throw punches at you, right? So the way you bait him in would be with feints. And I didn't see him throwing nearly enough feints. No. If you're not going to be the one pressing forward, you have to get your opponent to press forward. So I think a lot more feints would serve him in the future. So,
and then you're supposed to, when your opponent throws, you're supposed to throw back right away.
Right.
And it seemed like he was getting ready to, and then he would just pull back. He was getting gun shy, and it's like, you got to throw back right away. Even if you know you're not going to hit, it's just to have them think that, okay, he's going to throw back, and it's going to make them think a little bit more, and maybe they're not going to be as aggressive anymore. Maybe they'll be a little bit slower, a little bit more methodical with their shots, but it's at least going to give you a chance to think of a new game plan while they're trying to deal with you. But he didn't do any of that. He just was content, send back, throw, maybe once every now and then. It just wasn't enough. He just didn't put enough output out there. And that's kind of the problem that a lot of counter punchers have every now and then. They have a fight like that where they just don't do enough.
Yeah. Spent too much time looking for the perfect shot, which, like you said, counter fighters can get caught doing that. So, hopefully maybe a team change might be helpful for him, because his coaches weren't on him enough, I don't think. They need to instill that urgency in him.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's move on to Randy Brown. Gets a decision over Francisco Trinaldo, 44 years old. Trinaldo.
Yeah, they made the point to talk about how he fought 6 years beforehand against Paul Felder, and Paul Felder said he looks the same way then that he does now, and which is exactly. I liked how Trinaldo pushed the pace early with those. One thing I saw I liked, and then I hated that he went away from it, was that left kick to the inner leg of Randy Brown early. He was doing it early and often.
Yeah, they were landing hard.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, and you could see with how Brown likes to switch from orthodox to southpaw that it was hurting him, but he stayed in orthodox. But he went away from it, and I do know that one of the big things was the T kick to the face that Randy Brown started to do. They mentioned it like he was using it more like a jab, where you would do that, and then he followed it up with the overhand right, and that combination had a lot of success in there. In late first round, like early second round, and Trinaldo just went away from the kick and was just, okay, I'm going to just push you and try and land that overhand left shot. And just the distance game was just too much for him in the first 2 rounds because Randy Brown, of course, has a long body. He's moving a lot better. I think the move to Philly was a big plus for him. He's been working with of course, Gracie and Martinez, BJJ now. We're outside Philly, so he said that was a big thing. One of his main training partners fought last week, and Joe Pfeiffer. That's one of his main training partners. And they talk about how like they've helped each other so much the last year of training, and it's been a big plus for him. And you see the dividends of it with the grappling and just the distance management, able to throw a lot of those different leg kicks that he throws. I think early on, before he made the move, he would do a lot more grappling and try to take you down, and then use his striking secondary. Now he's kind of flipped it, where he's using the leg kicks more, following it up with the like nice combination overhand shot, and then going for the takedowns if he has a chance to. And it's allowing him to like up the volume, push the pace. He's not wasting too much energy as he was. He did look kind of hurt, I think, at the beginning of the third round. No, at the second, he got caught with a shot, but he recovered well. And then he did decent in the third round, but he had that fight first 2 rounds. He poured in more volume. Trinaldo really only had those power shots that he connected every now and then, like those 4 or 5 shots that he did, but he got taken down. And that's one thing I liked. I like the reversal of your game plan, going from grappler to striker to now striker with grappling tendencies.
What do you think? I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask Chevy. You can go. What do you think's next for Randy Brown?
Well, he's on a win streak, so in the range that he's at now, because he's had some good wins in the last couple of fights. I'm going to actually bring it up because I know he's on like a 3 fight. He beat Trinaldo. He beat Caleb Williams. That's one that I didn't expect him to get. He beat Jared Gooden and he beat Alex Oliveira, and that's right before Luque. So it's like, you would think that maybe he'd have a fight where he would get a chance to go into the top 15, like maybe like a 15 to 20 range fight now with the 4-fight win streak. That's what you see with guys now. They have to, even after a loss, like if he lost to Luque and then come in there, he's beaten Barberina before Mickey Gall. His only losses are to Luque, Nico Price, and below Muhammad.
Right, tough guys.
The tough guys that are right around that range in the top 15, the top 20 range. And it's like, maybe it's his chance to try and crack the top 15 now.
He was winning that Nico Price fight too. But he got knocked out with that hammer fist from the ground.
Yeah.
He even looked decent against Luque in that fight, but then he got KO'd in the second. Like he was doing good in the first, but then Luque took over in the second. So
super dangerous for sure.
yeah.
So, all right, let's move on to the main event. Yan Xiaonan gets a majority decision over Dern. What did you think about this one? There's a little bit of controversy with the scoring. How did you see this one going?
I just watched it right before it came on, so I watched it. It's very fresh in my mind. Like I didn't get a chance to watch it live, and then when I looked at the score, the stat card, because I kind of like to watch the fight to maybe like looking at the stats and see if the stats tell a different story than if you're watching it, your eyes do. And of course, you see Dern outstruck her by 100 strikes, but then watching it, I see 100 of those 200 strikes on round 5. So
yeah,
of course, it's like, okay, I take out round 5 out of it. I already gave that to Dern. So then I just look at the first 4 rounds. Round 1 was close. The only times that Dern had like shots in was when Yan was moving backwards instead of the circular motion. She was able to get to her and kind of take her down or put her in positions where she would drop guard and pull her down. But I felt like Yan landed enough power shots. I like the fact that she was using a lot more leg kicks in this fight than she was in the past. That's a thing that she probably added for the last 2 fights because I know she did it against Marina in the last fight, and then she just stopped doing it, and then that's kind of what cost her that fight, in my opinion, was not using enough of the leg kicks. But she used the leg kicks all 5 rounds, and then whenever she circled, she did a great job that way. And I think the big thing with this fight was just the defend the takedowns.
Yeah, I thought so. I would have given it a draw technically because I would have given Dern a 10-8 round on that 5th round. So I would have scored it a draw, but I don't think it's some egregious mistake to have given Yan the win. I could see it going that way for sure. But I think the story of this fight really for me is Yan's grappling defense, because going into this fight, I thought that if the fight got to the ground, Dern was going to submit her within a minute. I think I said within a minute. Yeah.
I felt that she wasn't as urgent trying to take her down. It was more more strategic instead of more aggressive. It was like, okay, I'm going to drop guard in a second. She pulled her down, and that's what gave her that one submission lock on her that she had on her for over a minute. She did the same thing in the 4th. There was one point where I felt like she didn't take advantage. She had the leg of Yan. She had it up, and I felt like she could have swiped her other leg and then dropped her down. But Yan had very good balance there. Dern looked like she was getting a little bit tired anyway, and she just waited too long to do it. And by the time she went to try and get it, Yan got her foot down and got out of the position. If she would have gotten that, I felt like she would have had a good chance of getting a guillotine or dropping on top and throwing some ground and pound. And that was a missed opportunity because I think that was round 3, and I gave that to Yan with the striking because it was Yan. Then the second round, I gave the Dern. I gave 3rd to Yan. It could have been Dern if she got the takedown. 4 was Yan again, and then 5 was Dern. And these 10-8s, I think it's so inconsistent how they do it. Like I'll see a fight like this where it's 88-5 and they do it 10-9, but then I see a fight where it's maybe like 35-2, and it gets up and they score that at 10-8. It's like, at what point do you get more consistent with it and you change the scoring aspect to make it a legit 10-8? Because it's like, it's so random. Like I don't know what a 10-8 is anymore or 10-9. I just don't know.
Right, and it depends on what commission you're at and everything, because even that is different. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I thought that, like I said, I was impressed with Yan's overall game plan. I think she's with Team Alpha Male. So they had her ready. Great game plan going into it. Great execution by her. Great submission defense. I felt bad for Dern. Not her best showing for sure, but all credit to Jan.
Yep.
But she did mention that, not having the fans there, not to bring it back around to Mark Zuckerberg, but not having the fans there did affect her. And I can imagine, you're a cage fighter, you're a modern day gladiator. Do you think that that's a big blow?
I think I just want to say something on this because we've heard fighters say the opposite too, though, that it's nice not to have the fans. So I think it really depends on the fighter itself. And at the end of the day, God be it, I'm not in a cage, but it's like any job at that point. It's on you to get the job done, right? So, credit to Jan. She was the better fighter on this day, I think. And I was pulling for Dern. I thought Dern would be, a lot more, just way better on the ground, what we saw. And, but to me, when you say things like, okay, you had an injury, you had an injury, that could affect the fight. You were sick. But with things like, well, there were no fans. Yeah, it can affect the fight, but that's more of a mental game, I feel like. And that's on you to, figure that out.
And I look at her last fight. I feel like Tessa Torres beat her in that fight, but they gave it to Dern because of the grappling. That was also at a Fight Night UFC Apex fight there, where it was a similar thing. There wasn't that many fans there, but she was more aggressive in that fight with her takedowns. She got outstriked in that one, but she out-grappled Torres in a lot of situations. And I feel like Torres is going to push the pressure more with her hands than Jan is. It's just that Jan was able to create a little bit of distance with the leg kicks. Mm-hmm. And when she circled around, it was a lot harder for Dern to think of entryways into the takedown. And maybe that's why we saw the unusual methods to try and get her down. Like drop it into guard, or she fell down throwing a kick, and then she just stayed down and grabbed the leg to try and pull her down. Maybe she just was getting frustrated with the movement of Jan. We don't know until you ask her about that, what happened, and she might not even give it up right away. But I felt like maybe that was the issue she had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, guys, I think it's time we get ready to wrap this up. So, Dan, before I have Chevy tell us what we got coming up next, since you're our guest, tell everybody where they can find you and some of the stuff you may have coming up.
Yeah, of course, at Cage by IQ. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is at Cage IQ. I'm, of course, on Instagram as well, Cage My IQ. And then whenever I go live on YouTube and Twitch. You can find my Twitch at Cage My IQ. And then, of course, YouTube at www.youtube.com/c/CageMyIQ. I got a couple of shows coming up. I'm doing a New Japan one tomorrow for Declaration of Power. I'm also in the middle of scheduling an interview with Chris Barnett. That's going to be a great
boy.
one.
Beast boy.
Yep. I'm talking to him right now. He's got to wait for an opening, and we're seeing what days work best for us. I got that. And then, of course, I'm going to be recording Fight Night for next week, sometime this weekend, and I'll probably have that preview out on Monday.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. Oh, and Chevy, before Dan gets out, why don't you tell us what we got coming up next, too?
All right. So tomorrow, actually, we're going to be recording a podcast with our first LFA fighter interview. So that'll be Mateo Gonzalez. Tomorrow we'll be live at 6 p.m.
Got a fight coming up in 2 weeks, too.
Yep, he's got a fight coming up. Yep. He's currently 3-0, so we're looking forward to talking to him. So October 15th, we're going to be previewing UFC Fight Night, Grasso versus Arroyo. October 22nd, huge UFC 280 pay-per-view, Oliveira versus Makachev. And then October 29th, UFC Fight Night, Cater versus Allen. And then tonight, it's got to be live right now. It's after 7 p.m. We're airing Cage My IQ's interview of current UFC flyweight Miranda Maverick.
Yep. So for the next couple of weeks, you'll see some Cage My IQ interviews on our YouTube, and eventually we're going to see some working fans interviews coming up with Cage My Q as well. So
yeah, probably the first one will probably be, like I said, depend on when I get a chance to either this Friday or maybe I'll do Monday.
So cross promotion, a little more wrestling on Cage My Q, a little more MMA on the working fans, but we're getting it done. Dan, always a pleasure to have you on and talk MMA with you and wrestling and everything. We'll have to have you back again soon.
Absolutely.
You bring a lot of insight. Maybe we'll do something for the big pay-per-view coming up. So.
Yeah, and maybe I'll have you on my show as well. Do a little bit of wrestling or MMA, vice versa.
Absolutely. All right, guys. As always, it's a pleasure. Thanks.